It was a hearing that was combative right from the very start.
You can let her filibuster all day long, but not on our watch. Not on our time. No way. And I told you about that, Attorney General, before you started.
You don't tell me.
Yeah, I did tell you because we saw what you did in the Senate.
A hearing with Attorney General Pam Bondi that got so heated, one Democratic member left the hearing room.
Didn't ask Merrick Garland anything about Epstein, not once. When he was
weak sauce.
Also, I want the record to reflect that, with this anti-Semitic culture right now, she voted against a resolution condemning.
Oh,
is Jewish. I just want to be clear.
So you want to go there, Attorney General? Are you serious? Talking about anti-Semitism to a woman who lost her grandfather in the Holocaust.
Bondi challenged by Republican Tom Massey over the Department of Justice redactions in the file, including Leslie Wexner, founder of Victoria's Secret.
Within 40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
There was one redaction out of over
listed as a co-conspirator.
This guy has Trump derangement syndrome.
Hey world, Adam is here. Something is happening in Washington right now that political insiders thought was impossible in this climate. For the first time in years, the left and the right are furious at the exact same person. Not because of some policy disagreement or budget fight, but because of something far darker.
Former Prince Andrew, Donald Trump attended various parties with Jeffrey Epstein. I want to know, were there any underage girls at that party or at any party that Trump attended with Jeffrey Epstein?
This is so ridiculous, and that they are trying to deflect from all the great things Donald Trump has done. There is no evidence that Donald Trump has committed a crime. Everyone knows that. This has been the most transparent presidency. He's the one that asked that those files.
I'm reclaiming my time. I got your answer. You said there's no evidence.
Trump asked
Mr. Chairman, please stop the clock.
Stop the clock. The legislation. This is
time belongs to the gentleman from California.
Okay. I'm going to put up another document from a witness who called the FBI's National Threat Operations Center, because I believe you just lied under oath. There is ample evidence in the Epstein file.
Don't you ever accuse me of a crime.
I believe you just lied under oath, and this is all on videotape.
The Attorney General of the United States has allegedly been caught red-handed using the Justice Department not to investigate crime, but to cover for the powerful and punish the people asking too many questions. And the allegations against Pam Bondi are so serious, so brazen, that legal experts are now openly discussing something that would have been unthinkable just months ago: prison time.
Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal asking Epstein survivors in the audience to stand and offering Bondi the opportunity to apologize to them.
Will you turn to them now and apologize for what your Department of Justice has put them through?
I'm not going to get in the gutter for her theatrics.
Afterwards, several of those survivors sitting down with NBC's Hallie Jackson.
Show me your hands if you were satisfied with what you heard from the Attorney General today. Nobody. There wasn't even an adult in the room that could apologize for the damage done to children and girls.
We are talking about federal obstruction statutes that carry penalties of up to 20 years behind bars, and the evidence piling up against her is starting to look like a prosecutor's dream case. What makes this moment so extraordinary is the sheer unity of the outrage. When was the last time you saw MAGA loyalists and Democratic activists wanting the same thing? When was the last time Republican senators and Democratic representatives were using the same language to describe a cabinet official? That is exactly where we are right now. The calls for Bondi's arrest are not coming from one corner of the internet. They are coming from survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's trafficking network. They are coming from lawmakers who have reviewed the evidence. They are coming from legal analysts who have spent decades interpreting federal law. And the reason the fury is spreading so fast is that this is not about partisan politics anymore. This is about whether the most powerful law enforcement official in the country is actively protecting child traffickers and their wealthy associates while using government surveillance to attack the very people trying to expose the truth. Let me take you inside that House Judiciary hearing that changed everything. For hours, Pam Bondi sat at the witness table while lawmakers from both parties took turns eviscerating her. The New York Times reported that the tension in that room was unlike anything seen in years. Bondi had come prepared with talking points, with attacks on Trump's critics, with everything except what the survivors in that room desperately needed to hear. When asked directly if she would apologize to the women who had been exploited as children by Epstein and his associates, Bondi refused. She wouldn't do it. She pivoted instead to attacking the president's political enemies. And the survivors sitting in that room? After the hearing ended, they gathered outside. NBC's Helly Jackson asked them a simple question. Raise your hands if you were satisfied with what you heard from the Attorney General today. Not a single hand went up. Not one. One survivor put it bluntly. There wasn't even an adult in the room who could apologize for the damage done to children. Another said that hearing the government say, "We're moving on," enrages her more than anything. These are not political operatives. These are victims who have waited years for accountability, only to watch the nation's top law enforcement officer treat them as an inconvenience. Now here is where this story takes a turn that sounds like something from a dystopian thriller. During that same hearing, Democrats dropped a bombshell that sent shockwaves through Washington. They presented evidence that Bondi's Justice Department had been collecting the search histories of members of Congress. Let that sink in for a moment. Lawmakers had gone to a government facility to view unredacted Epstein files as part of their constitutional oversight responsibilities. And instead of facilitating that oversight, instead of treating it as the legitimate function of a co-equal branch of government, someone in Bondi's department allegedly tracked exactly what they were looking at, compiled that information into what lawmakers described as a burn book-style dossier, and then used it as opposition research to attack those same lawmakers during the hearing. This is not how a democracy is supposed to work. This is how authoritarian regimes operate. When the Attorney General uses surveillance powers not to catch criminals but to build political attack files on the people charged with overseeing her department, the separation of powers ceases to exist. What we are watching is the weaponization of the federal government against the legislative branch itself. And the implications go far beyond this single hearing. Because what this surveillance proves is that Bondi's Justice Department is not acting as an independent law enforcement institution. It is acting as the president's personal protection agency. It is acting as a political operation with badges and guns and the full authority of the United States government behind it. The message being sent to every member of Congress, to every journalist, to every whistleblower, to every citizen who might ask uncomfortable questions is terrifyingly clear. If you try to hold us accountable, we will use every tool at our disposal to destroy you. That is the definition of authoritarian governance, and it is coming from the very person who swore an oath to defend the Constitution and uphold the rule of law. But the surveillance scandal is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Let's talk about the redactions. When the Justice Department finally released thousands of pages of Epstein-related documents, the public eagerly tore through them looking for answers. What they found instead was page after page of black ink, heavy redactions that made entire sections unreadable, key names completely hidden, investigative leads that lead nowhere because the crucial information has been blacked out. The New York Times noted that during the hearing, Bondi refused to explain why so few of Epstein's associates have been charged. She refused to explain why the redactions seemed designed to protect certain individuals. Instead, she attacked Trump's critics and changed the subject. But here is what makes those redactions so damning. They are not random. They are targeted. And the targets appear to be exactly the names and information that would be most damaging to the powerful people the president wants to protect. When you combine that pattern of politically motivated redactions with the fact that Bondi's department is simultaneously prosecuting 6 Democratic lawmakers over a video that angered Trump, the message is unmistakable. This Justice Department has 2 sets of rules, one for the president's allies and one for everyone else. And then there are the allegations that have legal analysts using words like textbook obstruction and 20 years in prison. Senator Dick Durbin issued a direct warning to Bondi during the hearing, telling her that she will ultimately have to answer for her actions in the Epstein matter. But it was what Durbin said next that really caught everyone's attention. He referenced specific instructions that Bondi allegedly gave to FBI agents about flagging references to Trump in the millions of pages of Epstein files. Think about that for a moment. The Attorney General of the United States allegedly told career FBI agents, people whose job is to investigate crimes, to flag every single mention of the president in documents related to a child sex trafficking investigation. Why would she do that? What legitimate law enforcement purpose could possibly be served by identifying every reference to Donald Trump in those files? The only answer that makes any sense is the most troubling one. She wanted to identify material that could be politically damaging so that it could be redacted, suppressed, or hidden before the public ever saw it. That is not law enforcement. That is a cover-up. And if proven, it meets the legal definition of obstruction of justice. The document removal allegations circulating separately from the hearing add yet another explosive dimension to this crisis. Legal analysts have been very specific about what the law says. Destroying, concealing, or removing documents that a court has ordered produced is a federal crime. The penalties are up to 20 years in prison. That is not some theoretical maximum that only applies in extreme cases. That is the statutory penalty that applies to anyone who interferes with court-ordered evidence production, regardless of their title or position. And commentators have noted that if the allegations about Bondi or her subordinates removing or interfering with court-ordered documents are proven, the conduct would constitute textbook obstruction for which prosecution would be not just possible, but obligatory under any fair application of the law. Now let's talk about Bondi's history because it adds crucial context to everything we are seeing. Before she became United States Attorney General, Bondi served as Florida's Attorney General. And in 2013, her office was considering whether to join a multi-state fraud investigation into Trump University. At that exact moment, she received a $25,000 campaign donation from a Trump-affiliated foundation. Shortly after, her office dropped the investigation, and later, Bondi endorsed Trump for president. That sequence of events, donation followed by dropped investigation followed by political endorsement, established a pattern that critics say has continued into her current role. Trump provides Bondi with political advancement. Bondi provides Trump with legal protection. And the Epstein file scandal is the most egregious example yet of that pattern playing out at the highest level of American law enforcement. The connection between the Epstein scandal and Bondi's role in suppressing the Jack Smith classified documents report makes both scandals more damaging than either would be alone. House Democrats have accused Bondi of suppressing Volume 2 of Smith's report with absolutely no justification. The Epstein redactions and the Smith report suppression together establish a pattern of using the Attorney General's authority to hide evidence that would damage the president and his allies. That pattern transforms Bondi from a controversial political figure into what critics describe as the central figure in a broader Trump-era cover-up culture. The Guardian reported that experts have accused Bondi of turning the Justice Department into Trump's personal law firm, targeting opponents, halting investigations, threatening allies, and operating the department as an instrument of presidential power rather than as an independent institution. And here is the irony that writes its own campaign ads. Remember, lock her up? That phrase was the signature chant of Trump's 2016 campaign directed at Hillary Clinton over her handling of classified emails. Now that same phrase is being turned against Trump's own attorney general over conduct that legal analysts describe as far more serious than anything Clinton was accused of. Clinton was accused of mishandling classified information on a private server. Bondi is accused of obstructing justice in a child sex trafficking case, surveilling members of Congress, and interfering with court-ordered document production. The irony of the president's own supporters' chant being turned against his own attorney general is devastating, and it gives Democrats the most emotionally resonant argument they have had during Trump's entire second term because it connects the abstract concept of government accountability to the concrete and viscerally upsetting reality of child sexual exploitation. The survivors of Epstein's trafficking network are real people with real stories. They have spent years fighting for the release of documents that they believe will identify the powerful individuals who participated in their abuse. When the Attorney General refuses to apologize to those survivors, when she authorizes redactions that hide the names they want exposed, she is telling the survivors and telling the entire country that the interests of powerful people matter more than the interests of children who were harmed. That message is politically radioactive. No candidate in any district can defend it without appearing to be indifferent to child exploitation. So here is where we are. The Attorney General of the United States sat through hours of congressional testimony. She was confronted with evidence that her department heavily redacted Epstein files to hide powerful names. She was confronted with evidence that her department surveilled lawmakers exercising oversight. She was asked to apologize to survivors of child sexual exploitation, and her response was not an apology. It was not empathy. It was an attack on the president's political opponents. That response told the American people everything they need to know about Pam Bondi's priorities. Her first loyalty is not to the law, not to the victims, not to the Constitution. It is to the president whose political interests she places above every other consideration, including the basic human obligation to acknowledge the suffering of exploited children. The calls for her arrest are not partisan. They are not theoretical. They are the natural response of a public that has watched the nation's top law enforcement officer betray her oath. And the question now is whether accountability will come or whether she will continue to operate above the law she was appointed to enforce. That is it for today. If this breakdown gave you a clearer picture of what is really happening, hit that like button and subscribe. We are tracking every development in this story as it unfolds. And trust me, you are not going to want to miss what comes next.